Welcome back to the channel with your man King Howie. And let's talk about it. The Bleacher Report that has dropped this major bomb on the Packer fan base was incredible. I thought the article by Tyler Dunn was riveting. It was shocking. It had me speechless. It had a lot of information in there from a lot of sources that was just eye-opening to the relationship between Aaron Rodgers and Coach Mike McCarthy. And we're going to sit here and we're going to break some of this down and see what really went down. In the Bleacher Report, it says that this started off in 2005 during the draft where Alex Smith, quarterback from Utah, and Aaron Rodgers, quarterback from Cal, were the top prospect quarterbacks in this draft. And a lot of analysts were leaning different ways. So were the 49ers. And at that time, Coach McCarthy was the offensive coordinator for the 49ers. And they decided to go with Alex Smith over Aaron Rodgers, which everybody was kind of shocked about. The talent of Aaron Rodgers was way better than Alex Smith's. And it showed on the film, and it showed in this picture right here where they both had to throw a football through a tire. And of course, Aaron Rodgers made the throw. Alex Smith didn't. As you can see in the picture where Alex Smith is throwing the ball, Aaron Rodgers is laughing in the background. During the combine, Aaron Rodgers said that he sat down and he met with Coach Mike McCarthy for 45 minutes and he felt that the interview process went well. You're talking about a hometown kid from Chico, big 49er fan, Joe Montana fan, Steve Young fan, grew up in the area. What young quarterback wouldn't love to play for one of the most historic teams in football, and he lives in that area? And Mike McCarthy decided to go with Alex Smith. If you could look at this picture, you could tell by Aaron Rodgers' face that he was totally pissed by the decision that the 49ers had made during this draft. The guy is sitting here with a $75 to $100 haircut, nice clean shave, nice suit, tailor-made suit, and he has to sit here for 4.5 hours being passed up by all these teams when he thought he was going to go number one to his hometown team, the 49ers. Aaron Rodgers get drafted by the Green Bay Packers at, I think, pick 24. He's happy to be a Packer. Says that he's willing to work hard to be the successor to Brett Favre, and he pretty much was on a super learning curve because the Packers were still dealing with Brett Favre's contract. Not to mention, Brett Favre said some things about Aaron Rodgers that rubbed him the wrong way, which caused their relationship to kind of go downward. It's on the up and up now, but back then it was downward with Brett Favre and all of his shenanigans that was going on. The Packers were ready to move on from Brett Favre. He was undecided about his retirement. Not to mention he was giving Mike McCarthy problems, and Mark Murphy and Ted Thompson were ready to move on from Brett Favre and let Aaron Rodgers get a chance to go out there and be the next quarterback for the Green Bay Packers with Coach Mike McCarthy. Now that these two were paired together, the Bleacher Report said that when Mike McCarthy was hired, Aaron Rodgers wasn't thrilled at all. They basically said that he was pretty mad about the hiring of Mike McCarthy coming to the Green Bay Packers as the head coach. The Bleacher Report talked to ex-Packer running back Ryan Grant, who said, Aaron always had a chip on his shoulder with Mike. The guy who ended up becoming your coach passed on you when he had a chance. Aaron was upset that Mike passed on him. That Mike actually verbally said that Alex Smith was a better quarterback than him. Ryan Grant also stated, think of mankind's never-ending debate over artificial intelligence, Grant says. When you put a quarterback in a position and you talk about how cerebral he is and you give him flexibility to make changes, guess what? You develop AI because it has the capacity to run without you. And then when it runs without you, it's like, wait a minute, but in the same breath, if you're not actually able to stay ahead of it, it's going to outthink you. And it's going to say, me making the decisions is the better decision. And so, Grant adds, you live and die by this greatness. The report stated that the problem for McCarthy was that as the talent drained, he failed to innovate. His scheme went stale and he didn't adapt. As one personal man puts it, McCarthy got full of his own juice. He believed his system, not the Packers' absurd amount of talent, was the foundation of the offensive success. But raw rookies cannot bust free one-on-one like, say, Jennings or Nelson or Jones. Tension with Rodgers over the play calling became part of the DNA of the offense itself. Rodgers felt the system was bland, so he increasingly played Superman football. The Bleacher Report also stated, but even in the best of times, when confetti should have been stuck to their clothing, one person who was then close to Rodgers remembers he would regularly call to vent that McCarthy didn't have a clue what he was doing. He'd tell him that McCarthy frequently called the wrong play, that he used the wrong personnel, that they were running plays that worked 1 out of 50 times in practice, that McCarthy was a buffoon, he was constantly bailing out. Mike has a low football IQ, and that used to always bother Aaron, this source says. He'd say Mike has one of the lowest IQs, if not the lowest IQ of any coach he ever had. Now that is alarming. Mike McCarthy used to praise himself about being one of the smartest coaches in the NFL. He even bragged about it one time. And with Aaron saying this was just eye-opening to me on all levels. The Bleacher Report article also said that Mike McCarthy tried to bill himself as the quarterback master, the players say. It was like, buddy, I just wanted to let you know Joe Montana did a lot more before he was in Kansas City. McCarthy felt he was the one who created this monster offense. A personnel man says that was McCarthy's big mistake. He wanted to be the guy, he wanted to be the reason, and he wasn't that good. It didn't help that McCarthy also rotating his assistants between positions annually. He wanted them to gain more experience, but as Grant points out, this didn't necessarily help the players. Many times they felt as though they knew more about the position than the own coach. Mike McCarthy, what was you doing out there, man? This article says a lot. The article continues. Many agree McCarthy could have saved himself if he had swallowed his pride and hired a bright offensive mind to challenge Rodgers. One beam of hope emerged in Alex Van Pelt, who coached running backs in 2012 and 2013 before moving over to quarterbacks in 2014. However, team sources say McCarthy felt threatened by Van Pelt, who became close to Rodgers. The Packers opted not to retain Van Pelt when his contract expired after 2017 season, which didn't sit well with Rodgers at all, which cut the grudge deeper. When Ted Thompson hired Mike McCarthy, he called him Pittsburgh Macho, and yet the coach rarely matched his no-bull rhetoric in press conferences with no-bull action. One personnel man calls him a fake tough guy, McCarthy rarely fined or benched or sent messages to players and paid the price almost every season. Never more so than in the game, the moment that'll define him in the eyes of many Packer fans. Multiple sources from the team say McCarthy should have cut inept backup tight end Brandon Bostic months before the NFC title game in 2015. Instead, he was on the field for a late Seahawks onside kick attempt, and instead of blocking his man, he went for the catch. The ball bounced off his helmet, and the Green Bay Packers collapsed. I remember this game. We played well for 56 minutes, and then in the last 4 minutes, everything just seemed to fall apart. Moments after that loss, Rodgers let his frustration show. He criticized the team's lack of aggressiveness, but he didn't blow up directly at McCarthy. That anyone interviewed saw. Quiet tension defined this relationship. One player who heard about McCarthy's massages even wonders aloud if Rodgers started that rumor and tried to spread it to anyone that'll listen. Neither Rodgers nor McCarthy could be reached to comment on this story. Now Greg Jennings. It was 2012 and the Packers were hosting the 49ers when mid-timeout. Cornerback Carlos Rogers playfully asked Jennings why he was running so many short routes. And Greg Jennings replied, "You know how it is," Jennings told him, "contract year." That's when Rodgers stepped in to say, per Jennings, "You guys should get him at the end of the year. Come again?" Jennings walked back to the huddle speechless. "I don't think he realizes what he said and the impact that it had," Jennings says. "Had the shoe been on the other foot and I said, 'Hey man, I should come play with your quarterback,' he would have been so offended by that. But when it comes out of his mouth, and we all know there's truth behind jokes, for him to say that and just act as though everything was the same, it just wasn't." The next day, Jennings told his position coach, Edgar Bennett, he knew this was his last year in Green Bay. "That was my headspace," he admits. He had been Rodgers' #1 receiver for 4 seasons running, racking up 4,619 receiving yards and 34 touchdowns from 2008 to 2011. He was on the receiving end of Rodgers' iconic Super Bowl thread the needle. He had opened his family's front door to Rodgers for Thanksgiving for any day he ever won because he knew his quarterback was alone in a new city. The report says, is he self-entitled? The moment Rodgers inked his new contract, one that could earn him up to $180 million, Finley knew a storm was brewing because Finley, Rodgers' #1 tight end for 4.5 years, remembers the entitlement his QB had even as a first-year starter when he was broke as fuck. "You gave a man $200 million, Finley says. He's the GM, he's the organization, he's the quarterback, and he's the head coach. He has a sense of entitlement already, and then you give him $200 million? You make him one of the highest paid in history? It comes with the territory, man. I think Rodgers man-to-man needs to take a little more blame." The article states that Aaron Rodgers will throw you in the doghouse. One former Packers scout says Rodgers can be brutally tough on young players. Sometimes it's necessary, other times not so much. The scout points to Jeff Janis, a 2014 7th-round flyer with rare size, 6'3", 220 pounds, and speed, 4 and a 40, who quickly became a fan favorite and Rodgers' favorite whipping boy. It was enough to alarm the scout, even though he wasn't high on Janis as a player. The article states that Aaron Rodgers is overly sensitive. That word constantly comes up when you ask about Rodgers. Where to begin? Sensitive is sensitive, Jennings begins. You hear what you want to hear, perceive what you want to perceive, nothing else matters. To illustrate, he points out his own broken relationship with the quarterback because he is confident that he's done everything in his power to mend it, while Rodgers has not. He punctuates, "by any stretch of the imagination." Jennings stated, covering a Packer game as a member of the media, Jennings tried to get Rodgers' attention, but the quarterback refused to acknowledge him. Jennings spoke to McCarthy. He spoke to the trainers. He spoke to everyone he could to set up a man-to-man chat. No cameras around and never heard a peep back. Not that he was surprised. This is the same quarterback who scolded him for daring to speak to Brett Favre when Favre was a Viking. Jennings still remembers an incensed Rodgers saying to him after the 2009 game, "Why do you have to do that?" as if he were accusing Jennings of picking sides. Now the pressure on Rodgers is rising like never before, Jennings adds, whether he likes it or not. Not so much with his play because we know his play is second to none, Jennings says. But now can he foster relationships and coexist with a head coach, a play caller that is going to put more on his plate to deliver for the betterment of the team? Not so much for the betterment of you. Statistically, with all your numbers, you're going to get your accolades. But now we're going to ask you to suppress your ego. Finley adds, A-Rod wants his. He wants to eat. He cares about his yards, his completions. He's going to have a hard time. That's like an addict. You tell an addict to change his ways when he's been stuck in his ways so long, I think it's going to be very tough. I thought he'll be able to grow out of it, but shit, you give a guy more money, there's more attitude, more diva-ness. Now, we didn't touch on any of the other things in the article about his family. We're not going to get into that, but we will talk about the disservice that Mike McCarthy has did to this team. You know, not preparing the young rookies to develop and progress. That's a problem, man. You're taking food and money out of their pocket because you're not doing your job, Mike McCarthy. And then the defense mentioned that you didn't let them hit in practice, in training camp. You didn't give a damn about the defense. Mike McCarthy, you just wanted to focus on the offense. And when you did that, you weren't around. You were not around. I don't understand how you could be getting paid that much money as a coach and you don't want to succeed and thrive and try to go win another Super Bowl. And as for Mark Murphy, I'll put all the blame on you. This all falls on your watch. You gave Ted Thompson the keys to the Ferrari. It ran good until it ran out of oil. And then you hired Matt LaFleur after you promised Packer fans that you were going to get Aaron Rodgers involved, but you don't. But then you call him and tell him, "Hey, Aaron, don't be the problem." Does that make any sense? I don't know. All I can say about this whole situation and this article coming out is that it doesn't make Aaron Rodgers look good. Of course, he has some blame within this whole fiasco that has come about after 13 long, hard years. I can't believe this went down, that this nonsense is what held this team back from being successful for multiple years. You add up all of the missed opportunities to win another Super Bowl, to bring the Lombardi back to 1265. All of the nonsense and the egos and the clashing and the attitudes. Like, we have to be above that. This team has to be above that. Now that McCarthy is gone, we get a new canvas to paint on and to make history. So I just hope that this team comes together collectively and think about winning.